Hey guys, it's Jay, here with another review video. Before the review begins, I'd like to ask if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and share with others. Without further ado, on to the vid. The episode begins with Kaguya sitting on a traffic light as Lewis and Real's battle rages on around him. He says that Lewis is unlucky, as even he doesn't interfere with Real's plans, and that when Real chooses to fight, it's usually quite strategic, as he does not believe in risk. He adds that thanks to Bjorn, Real is not at his full strength, so he chose Azam to gauge how much of his power had returned, and that he came there for an easy fight with no intent to even try. But Lewis is a force he did not predict, and that this will anger him. He then turns his head and sees Yukiko, which leaves him with a quiet expression. As Lewis's lance is stabbed in the ground, Leo's spirit appears next to him. He tells him that he has enraged the darkness and asks if he is ready. Lewis responds by telling him that if he fully enters that state, it will rapidly deplete his chi, and that he can also feel Veal slowly absorbing portions of his chi from the atmosphere. He then asks Leo how he can even fight. We then quickly flash back to Leo with the younger versions of the Cubs. Tevin asks Leo what happened to Lewis and what he just did, and Shay wonders if he is okay. Leo says he proved why he is their senior, as at just 17, he has done it. He has become one with his fathers. In the present, Leo stands by Lewis's side and says, "You already know the way, son. Now is the time to fully step into this state. The eldest of the pack isn't always its leader, but its wisdom and guidance. By doing this, they too will push past what they thought to be their limit. The first shall be the last, and the last shall be the first. Being their elder, you will be the first to go, but there is power in this. The way in which your end comes will determine how they live. They have held themselves back. Without purpose, there is nothing left to propel them forward. This has always been your task. Lead them to their potential." Lewis's hair then begins to glow a brighter red, as his torso and hand become like they did when he was younger, and when we see him again, he has now fully become one with his ash, with this technique being known as Death Stance Full Embrace. He looks towards Veal and tells him to come, and as the Blood Monarch takes a step, a massive Blood Beast tendril forms. Lewis simply waves his sword to the left, which causes multiple ash hands to push the Blood Beast out of the way. Veal then rushes through the arms and tells Lewis he will wish he had never challenged him, as he will break the bones of an entire generation. Lewis raises his sword and the two clash in the middle. Because of this, Veal compliments Lewis, saying he is impressive as he is holding nothing back, and that he holds great power like Shay did the first time they fought. He then adds that it means nothing to him unless he yields to them, and then he will make him greater than his pack. He also tells Lewis not to die here, as he sends a blood spike through him, though this does nothing to Lewis, and he tells Veal it will take a lot more to kill him than he anticipates. While saying this, he swings his lance down, causing Veal to be sent back. Lewis then says, "I see what you are doing. You've been attempting to absorb my chi since the beginning, but it has proven difficult for you. Ash of the Fathers is more unique than any other chi. You feel it, don't you? As you slowly absorb my chi piece by piece, you see memories in your thoughts. Visions of past lives that you do not understand. My loved ones live within the very chi you consider nothing more than an object to be used. Whilst you try to control it, it fights against you, because this chi lives." And as he finishes his sentence, he slams into the ground where Veal was, causing cracks to erupt. He continues with, "Our chi is more than just some mere force. Its weight does not come from the number of bodies that makes up its substance, but from the memories it stores. Every hemlock's love, dreams, and purpose. When your blade clashes against it, this is what resists you, Shadow, and soon my most precious memory will be added to it. The day I met them and became a cub." As the memory flash fades back into the present, Lewis looks at Veal and says, "What can you ever know of family? You are alone, and those around you serve in fear. Consider the anger you feel toward me and multiply it. This is what will face you when the pack surrounds you. Now tell me, Veggiezatha, can a bat hunt wolves? Whenever you feel like you can hide or you've escaped, remember this: the wolf's nose doth know." Now onto the highlights. So before we talk about the more major things, let's take a quick look at Kaguya. Now, Kaguya actually being there makes sense, as we more than likely assumed Veal only brought Dr. Hanzo and Ngai Meki. However, it's very consistent for Kaguya to be with Veal when he's out in public or on mission, as during season 1 we see him with Veal in Rokash's flashback, as well as when he was with him while they were testing the Titans out. Season 2 is a better example, as Kaguya shows up before Veal during the war, and of course, the reason he's able to escape. This shows that due to Kaguya's Kaguya's talent, he takes on a chauffeur role for Weyall, being the one to personally take him places or be his means of escape. Now, Kaguya says some pretty important things that I want to discuss. The first thing he says is that when Weyall chooses to fight, it's usually quite strategic, as he does not believe in risk. This is seemingly very true about Weyall, and there are two examples that best explain why. The first is regarding his plan to secure Mei while also killing Sabito. I feel like people don't fully understand the intricacies of Weyall's plan. Weyall very clearly wanted Mei so he could use her to fuel his army and eventually resurrect the Thanatos talent. And even though she was injured, he could save her using his blood art. However, he is also aware of Sabito being the one who protects her. So even if he can't acquire Mei, he can get rid of the one person he believes can kill him. First, he traps them with Ngai Meki's talent, so they can't get out, and no one who could help them would find them and get in. He's also certain that Mei will die, but is just as aware of Sabito only having a choice to hide or fight. Now, Sabito is also aware that Weyall brought an army to deal with him, and knows that Weyall fears fighting him due to their prior engagement, which means Weyall is using the death by 1,000 cuts tactic. It will use weaker individuals to slowly whittle Sabito down, resulting in his eventual death. What I feel people don't consider is the fact that even if Sabito dealt with the army faster, it still took him 3 days to do so, meaning the army was large enough to at most be able to occupy him for 72 hours straight. And if Sabito was able to deal with them in less time, he'd still have to fight Weyall while being at a disadvantage, as he would be working with less chi in comparison to his opponent, who would be at 100% and has a technique that would keep him alive. In this plan, no matter what, Weyall wins in some way. He either gets Mei, leading to his forces being fortified over time, or he loses her and sacrifices his army to get rid of a bigger threat to his life. And we know the loss of his army isn't a big deal, as he can not only recruit outcasts like Lathe outlines, but he had a plan to replace them years later with the inmates of Patmos. The second example comes from the Greenland War, where Weyall is actively present to ensure he gets what he came for. He brings many of his troops to ensure the military assets Code has present are occupied. He brought a Gaki that was more than likely meant for Bjorn to fight, and he only fights himself when the life of his most trusted subordinate is threatened by Shay. Kaguya then says Weyall is not at full strength, so he chose to fight Azam to see how much of his power has returned, and follows this up by saying he came for an easy fight with no intent to try. This tells us that even Weyall doesn't know how strong he is in comparison to the version of him that fought Bjorn. My question is, if he didn't intend to try against Azam, how accurate would this gauge of strength be then? It's one thing for him to try against an Azam that hasn't already fought, but to gauge your strength based on a weaker version of someone doesn't make sense, especially when those around you know you could take them out in their current condition. And lastly, we see Kaguya turn his head and see Yukiko. I'm wondering what kind of interaction this will bring about, since he is her actual uncle. And considering he was willing to use Black Mask against Shay and kill him, I can only imagine what he tried to do against Yukiko. However, there is a possibility this doesn't go as badly if he does appear in front of her, as considering his talkative nature, he may inform her of things she didn't know, as well as try to convince her to join their side. Moving to the more important things in the episode, let's now look at all the things that encompass Lewis. First, looking at the flashbacks, this confirms that Lewis achieved this ability when he was younger, as Leo says he did it at 17. This may also mean that this is Lewis's first time using this ability since he unlocked it. The flashbacks also reveal that Lewis was not the first to join Leo's gym, but in fact was the last. This itself has a deeper meaning, but I'll get back to that in a bit. The flashback also seemingly implies Lewis got his talent at around the age of 17, though it is likely it was a couple years sooner. However, regardless of what age he got his talent, I feel as though soon after he did is when he was brought to Leo's gym by his clan, as at that point, he would be the new clan head. And this should be the case as he's wearing a different version of his green robe that we saw in episode 23, which is the episode we find out he's the head of his family. Now I can't remember if I mentioned it in a past review, but I feel as though this flashback helps illustrate how the Hemlock family would want Lewis to be trained by Leo, as they live in the same country, and having their new clan head be trained by a war hero who's also someone of legendary strength only leads to their benefit, as it is a guaranteed way of ensuring the new head will be strong in the future. Now I want to focus more on on his conversation with Leo. Leo being present here and actually talking to Lewis, with Lewis seemingly understanding, shows that when a character appears with a golden hue in Ordeal, their spirit is actually present for a small moment in time, as any time a character has appeared in this way, they do not stay for long. There are a few exceptions to this, but as we have seen, Sabito shows up in the same way to interact with Shay, as well as Janelli with Anton. For some non-verbal examples, we have Leo showing up for Tevin, Miranda showing up behind Azam, and the priest showing up while Ilios is talking to Veal, though the last one may be one of the exceptions. But both the non-verbal and verbal examples suggest that only the specific person the spirit is meant to interact with is aware that they are there, unless you have a special sight like Reed and his kids, who can somewhat see when Mahalalo shows up to calm Shay down in season 2. Looking more at what Leo says, he says the first shall be the last and the last shall be the first, and this relates to what I said earlier about Lewis joining the gym last having a deeper meaning. Lewis is the eldest of the Cubs, making him the first, but he was the last to join the Red Ember gym, and as the last he shall be the first to go. Now everything Leo says to Lewis points to him dying during this fight, and as sad as that may seem, Leo informs him that his death will impact his brothers. As he says, they have held themselves back, and without purpose there is nothing left to propel them forward. The concept of them holding themselves back is inherently true for all of them. Now I initially thought this meant in terms of their power and their capacity to hold it back, and I believe this is still somewhat true, as Shay, even though purposefully, does this against Jose and Leith. But Faceless Eternal helped me understand the deeper meaning in Leo's words. After Leo's death, the Cubs' ultimate goal was to avenge their master. This caused them to show up at Rokash's tournament in hopes that they could beat him in it, and is the driving force behind the fights near the end of season 1, as even though they do fight Rokash and the others, they initially set out to help the police. After Leo's death was avenged, they no longer had a grand goal to drive their growth, and this is what Leo means. Yes, they have their own individual goals and have achieved greater individual strength, but Lewis's death would push them forward in the same way Leo's death did. And as Leo said, this has always been Lewis's purpose. And this concept relates to what Anton says in episode 75, where he tells Shay and Tevin that brothers like them are already prepared to die for each other. And as we see, after Leo's words, Lewis is fully ready to shoulder this fate. This death could even impact Elon Jr., who will be the next wielder of the Ash of the Father's talent, as hearing how his cousin went out and what he meant to others could motivate him to become one of the best wielders of his family's talent. This entire thing shows how death is a catalyst for things in Ordeal. For example, the death of Rokash and Leo caused Veal to be more confident in his own plans. Leo and Bjorn's death have affected Shay in such a way that it is affecting his character and outlook on life. And Bjorn's death helped reveal the truth of Veal's abilities to the world and showed that it's possible for him to be beaten, leading to right now where Lewis is currently trying to fight Veal and hold him here so that someone else can take the reins and defeat him permanently. Now we can look more into Lewis and his ability. So Lewis refers to it as Death Stance Full Embrace, which implies this is the full use of the technique, and what he was doing before was the precursor to this. However, there is still a distinction between Full Embrace and the prior use of Death Stance, and that is the lack of full talent fusion. In last week's review, I explained how Lewis was fusing the ashes of his talent with the cells of his body. However, there was still a separation between him and the talent he wields, though the technique was starting to blur that line. But the Full Embrace version erases the line altogether, as we see Lewis and his talent have fully become one, and there is no distinction between the two. Those who achieve this ability are referred to as Sentinels, and they gain temporary immortality, and this is what Kevin and Goro are classified as. The fact that Lewis's version of being a Sentinel is a technique shows how Kevin and Goro are in a permanent state of being Sentinels. This also further explains why Goro was able to heal from every attack, as his talent wasn't simply keeping his body alive by healing it, his body and his talent came together, which allowed him permanent access to a form of immortality through healing. Spinning back to Lewis, he says fully entering this state will rapidly deplete his chi, which is the technique's trade-off, and overuse of it will result in one's death. The technique also seems to greatly strengthen the individual, as Veal and Lewis clash, and this causes Veal to compare Lewis to War Stage Shay last season, with them even sharing a mirroring panel, showing how at the very least, Full Embrace Death Stance Lewis is comparable to that version of Shay. And lastly, I want to look at the term Sentinel itself. Now, the definition of Sentinel is a soldier or guard whose job is to stand and keep watch. Synonyms for the word include guardian, guard, or sentry. Keeping this in mind, I want to shout out Mango for something he pointed out to me in the Discord, as he notes the word Sentinel is perfect for a fused Kimyo, as the three characters we know who have that title battle all gained it as a result of protecting something or someone, which may mean the way to achieve the state of Sentinel comes from a desire to protect something that is so intense it causes your talent to fuse with you, giving you grander power with it. And finally, I want to look at what Lewis says about the chi of his talent. He says the chi of Ash of the Fathers is more unique than other chi, and that his loved ones live within the chi. He then says its weight does not come from the bodies that make up its substance, but from the memories it stores. This confirms the concept that part of a past user's soul will remain inside the talent, as Lewis's family's memories reside within his chi. We also see lots of Hemlock Clan men stand beside Lewis with the golden hue, symbolizing they are present with him as well. And this is because part of them lives inside the talent. And just to clarify this, the concept of soul and memories being a part of the talent makes sense, as your soul is seen as your spiritual self, while of course your body is your physical self. But both of these things are inherently you, and make up things that relate to you, such as memories, desires, and beliefs. And even when you die physically, you can still exist spiritually. And this is why Lewis says his chi lives, as a part of his forefathers' souls reside in the talent he wields, and the important things that made up those individuals are now ingrained into the talent. And this is also why Lewis says every Hemlock's love, dreams, and purpose is a part of the talent's chi. This all culminates in Lewis's Ash being able to resist Yall. So while Lewis fights against him physically, his forefathers fight against him spiritually, and refuse to bend to his will while he tries to absorb and control their chi. This is something Acidic Octopus mentioned in his comment that I spotlighted, and while the actual method is different, the overall concept is still very clearly present. To end things off, I want to say that it's pretty crazy that last week I covered full talent fusion with Goro and Kevin and used Lewis as a way to further explain them, but was still surprised that Lewis achieved full talent fusion himself, as that idea, even after all of my explaining, completely went over my head. I also really enjoyed the Wolves and Bat visual, as the bigger one is obviously Leo, but the two to his left represent Lewis and Shay, as the further one is lighter with blue eyes, and the closer one has scars over its body as well as its eye. The placement may also suggest the separation between the Cubs, as Lewis is seemingly going to die from this fight, and we already know the route Shay will go down, which leaves him separated from the Cubs. Now, if I'm being completely honest, this might be in my top favorite episodes this season, as I haven't felt the same full excitement reading an episode since I read 132, but especially when I read 127. And lastly, for the comment of the week, I would like to put a spotlight on Denvor, who comments on the quality of the episode, as well as how the focus isn't currently on Shay, and with how the Cubs are being prepared to grow stronger. I like this comment as it highlights an underrated part of the series that I feel people really enjoy, and that is when Shay isn't the main focus, and when other characters are brought to the forefront and are given more lore and screen time. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Let me know what your favorite part of the chapter was in the comments below, as well as how you feel about the things I mentioned in the highlight section. Don't forget to read the actual episode for yourself, and be sure to like it as well. And I will see y'all in the next one.